Good morning, students. In the previous lecture of the organic chemistry, we discussed about some fundamental purification methods of organic compounds. The first method was sublimation. After that, second method of purification was crystallization. After that, third method, which is containing four different methods, is distillation, where we studied common distillation, fractional distillation, distillation under reduced pressure, and steam distillation. After that, we discussed fractional distillation, and after this, our fourth particular topic is chromatography, a last method for the purification of organic compound. Now, what is chromatography? Chromatography means separation. Chromatography means separation. Word chroma is a Greek word that means color. In a history of a science, a colored substance from vegetables was separated by this type of methods. That's why they are called chromatography. In the chromatography, there are two phases. One, mobile phase, in the sense moving phase, and the second one is stationary phase, in the sense stable phase. There are two types of chromatographies. One is adsorption chromatography, and the another one is partition chromatography. Both are working on a similar concept, similar properties. First, we are going to discuss about adsorption chromatography, which is containing two different methods, column chromatography and thin layer chromatography. First of all, what is adsorption? Adsorption means when one substance is absorbed on the surface of another substance. Suppose we have charcoal. Charcoal is going to absorb color from any substance. That's why it is called absorption, not adsorption. So for the adsorption, when absorption is only on the surface, not inside, sponge do absorb. But when I do this line, it is adsorbed on the surface. It is only on the surface, not inside the board. That's why it is called adsorption. So, adsorption means when one substance is adsorbed on the surface only. And when we use this concept in the chromatography, that is known as a adsorption chromatography. What happens here? We have one stationary phase of adsorbent, the substance which is going to adsorb. We have one stationary phase adsorbent, for example, alumina and silica gel. These two substances can be worked as an adsorbent. So now, when substance or a mixture passes through the stationary phase, on its rate of adsorption, they are going to be separated. Some of the substance adsorbs fast, so there will be on the top. Some substance have low speed or low rate of adsorption, they will be at the bottom because they travel more, because they absorb less. Okay, so on that concept, our first chromatography is column chromatography, where we have one glass tube, or you can say burette. You can take a burette or a glass tube. In that particular burette, first of all, we are going to add our stationary phase adsorbent, either alumina or silica gel, or the mixture of both of them, equal unisex mixture of both of them. So adsorbent. Then I am going to add our mixture of organic compound A, B and C. Our organic compound A, B and C is mixed up and is solute into the solvent. So we have one solution of organic compound A, B and C. It is over here. First of all, when we add it, they will settle down and solvent will be on the top. Now absorbent is the stationary phase and mixture ABC of the compound will be our mobile phase, traveling phase. So after some amount of time, first of all, glass wool will protect the burette by losing any compound. Compound will not surpass the glass wool. That's why I have put a glass wool over here. So after some amount of time, when we see properly, our compound is moved down into the absorbent. The compound A has more rate of adsorption, that's why it will be adsorbed fast on the upper level of the glass tube, and mixture of B and C will carry forward down. After more time, we can see clearly three different regions of the color, because all of the three substances were adsorbed at a different level because of their rate of adsorbent is different. That's why they are going to adsorb at a different level. That's why we can see three different spots of three different compounds and we can separate them. So that is why it is called column chromatography. We can do it in a bulk or we can do it in a laboratory. Our next chromatography method is thin layer chromatography. Now what is thin layer chromatography? It is a very common method used in the laboratory only. Okay, first of all, I have a one jar, one bowl, one particular glass jar. Inside that I have a one glass plate, transparent glass plate, a rectangle transparent glass plate on which I have one thin layer of 0.2 mm of silica or alumina. I have put a very thin layer of silica or alumina on this glass plate of 0.2 mm. Clear? So that now this glass plate work as a stationary phase adsorbent. I have put it down this glass plate into my jar, where inside the jar we have taken the solvent. The solvent touching on the glass plate, that line, this blue line, dotted line, is known as a base line, from where our mobile phase will travel upside. Clear? So from this baseline everything will go upside, but when we start, I have put my sample organic compound mixture at the 2 cm up from the baseline. Okay, so when we move it, when time passes, the baseline will absorb the solvent and solvent will move upside. So as the solvent goes upside, absorbed, the sample will also spread into the TLC plate. It is also known as a chroma plate. So after some time, we can see that our solvent is on the maximum height. That is called solvent front. This green line is called solvent front. So in the sense, our solvent has travelled Y amount of distance and our sample has travelled spread X amount of distance. Now we can see that a clear spread of a color, if our substance is colored, we can see a clear spread of the color. But what if our substance is colorless? If our substance is colorless, we have to put it under ultraviolet light. If we put it under ultraviolet light, we will see our substance spectrum or spread like this. Second method to see, we have to put some iodine crystal inside the jar so that our substance will absorb iodine and it will be seen as a brownish color. Or else, if we are testing about amino acid, this is the most I am behind. If we are testing about amino acids, we are going to spray ninhydrin substance on that so that we can see the spread of amino acid onto our TLC plate or our chroma plate. This is called thin layer chromatography. For that, we have to calculate retardation factor, in the sense how much our substance has been traveled. Retardation factor RF. The formula for RF is distance covered by the substance X, that distance will be known as X, divided by substance distance traveled by the solvent, that will be known as Y. So X divided by Y will be the formula for RF. This formula will be useful in the 11th or 12th practicals. We will use this particular formula in the practicals of the chromatography. So that was all about the absorption chromatography. Now the second type is partition chromatography. As we discussed, every single substance have different rate of partitions on the basis of adsorption. So we are going to use that factor as a partition chromatography. For that, our single method for partition chromatography is paper chromatography. Okay, what is paper chromatography? It is thin layer chromatography. A same procedure will be followed into the paper chromatography, but only a one difference. Here we have taken a glass plate coated with silica gel or alumina, but here I am taking a special type of chromatography paper which is trapped with water molecules. So it is paper and it is a glass plate coated with silica. That is the main difference. Otherwise all the principles are same, all the factors are same, every single thing will be same between paper chromatography and thin layer chromatography. Only a single difference is there. Here we have taken paper, a special kind of paper which will be known as a chromatogram, and that paper is containing of special type of water trapped inside it. So when we put the paper over here, the solvent goes upwards because of water, and with that our sample will also move upward. If our sample is colorless, we cannot see it properly, so we have to use ultraviolet light or else iodine crystals or else ninhydrin spray. Everything is similar between thin layer chromatography and paper chromatography, only a single difference. Here we are using paper and here we are using glass plate coated with either silica gel or alumina. That was all about purification of organic compound. Now we are going to do some practicals. Here, qualitative analysis of organic compound. Qualitative analysis of organic compound. What is qualitative analysis? We are going to check quality, means qualitative analysis. Okay, how we can check the quality? We are not going to assure that it is 100% pure. That type of quality checking is not doing here. We are doing elemental wise quality check. First of all, we are going to check presence of carbon and hydrogen. After that, we are going to check presence of nitrogen. After that, presence of sulfur. After that, presence of halogen. After that, presence of phosphorus. We are going to check presence of any element in there. So let's start with carbon and hydrogen test. Okay, we are talking about organic compound. We are talking about organic compound. Have you seen any organic compound without carbon? No. Have you seen any organic compound without hydrogen? Yes, very less compound are there. But if any time we talk about organic compound, there will be two common names. Carbon and hydrogen must be present into the organic compound. So we do not have to do this test. But what if we want to do that test? So there is test available for carbon and hydrogen separately. For first one, the carbon, test for carbon and then test for hydrogen. Simultaneously, it is happening together because whenever we test for carbon, we already testing for hydrogen also. So when we add cupric oxide into our organic compound and we heat it, cupric oxide into the organic compound and we heat it, cupric oxide will be reduced to copper. It is black in color, it is red in color. We will see red particles of copper inside the vessel and carbon dioxide gas will release. When this carbon dioxide gas passed from slaked lime, in the sense CaOH twice, it makes our solution milky because of the solid particle of CaCO3 is formed and water will release. Simultaneously, cupric oxide will be reduced by hydrogen as a copper and hydrogen will combine with oxygen and forms water. That water is going to hydrate copper sulfate, which is white in color, into the blue. Copper sulfate anhydrous will be hydrated with the water and it will form CuSO4 into 5H2, which is blue in color. Okay, copper sulfate is white in color and copper sulfate into 5H2O is light blue in color. These are going to form crystals. So that was about test of carbon and hydrogen, which was totally unnecessary. Now let's talk about what is necessary and what is important for us. What we are going to study, what we are going to do in our further standards, which type of practicals, which type of jobs we are going to do in chemistry. So the first step towards the future goes by Lessine test. What is Lessine test? It is a very common test used for presence of nitrogen, sulfur, halogens and phosphorus. Okay, we all have seen test tubes. Test tubes, we are familiar with the test tubes. Let's make it small onto this size and diameter will be also small of this size. Glass will be very tempered glass, in the sense if we put it down it will be broken. Very tempered glass, in the sense very soft glass. If we give more pressure, glass will break. So that type of tube is known as a fusion tube. We are using fusion tube into the Lessine test. It has only one purpose: to break. Fusion tube have only one purpose in the life, that is to break. Okay, so we are going to break some fusion tubes now. We have fusion tube. I am taking a piece of a sodium, very small piece of a sodium, and I am putting it inside the fusion tube. After that, with a one handle, I am going to heat it on the burner. I am going to heat it on the burner, so sodium will be in the liquid form and it will spread all over the fusion tube, inside the bottom of the fusion tube. After that, I am going to add some of my organic compound inside this, which I want to test. I will put some organic compound inside and again I am going to heat it, so that everything mix up properly and spread evenly at the bottom of the fusion tube. After that, I have one bowl of the water and I am going to break it inside the bowl. So that particular sodium extract will be dissolved inside the bowl, and that is my Leysin solution. I am going to filter my Leysin solution, so glass will be in the bowl and I have now my Leysin solution, because it has now our sodium extract with organic compound, everything is separated. That Leysin solution will be used for further tests. Okay. Now that Leysin extract, Leysin solution, we are going to separately use them as a nitrogen test, sulfur test, halogen test, phosphorus test. Okay. But what we have done through the Leysin test, what is chemistry behind Leysin test? A very simple chemistry is there. Because of Leysin test, we are using organic compound, and organic compounds have covalent bonds. If organic compounds have covalent bonds, it will be very difficult to test it. So we are changing covalent compound into ionic compound by Leysin test. We are changing covalent compound into ionic compound so that we can test it better. That was the only explanation about Leysin test. So first step was converting organic substance into inorganic substance, so that we can test every single element separately. So now let's going to test first nitrogen. It is very simple. Okay, this is for Leysin solution. If we have nitrogen present into the organic compound, it will combine with carbon and sodium and it will give us sodium cyanide. Sodium cyanide is inorganic compound. They give us Na plus and Cn minus into water, and we are going to test Cn minus. It is very similar, very common practice. So sodium cyanide will be going to be added into ferrous sulfate, or ferrous sulfate is added into sodium cyanide with some amount of H2SO4 to make it acidic. We will obtain sodium hexaferric 3, sodium hexaferric 3, or sodium ferrocyanide, sodium ferrocyanide. Okay, that sodium ferrocyanide will react with some of the Fe plus 3. Why Fe plus 3? Because some of the ferrous sulfate is converted into ferric sulfate. Fe plus 2 will be converted into Fe plus 3 because of the presence of acid. So this sodium ferrocyanide will react with Fe plus 3 and it will give us ferric 3 or iron 3 hexaferrocyanide, iron 3 hexacyanide, ferric 2. Common name for that is ferriferrocyanide, and that compound have Persian blue color. That means if we add ferrous sulfate into our Leysin solution and after that H2SO4 and we slightly warm it, if we gain Persian blue color, that means our compound have nitrogen in it. If we do not gain any Persian blue color, that means our compound do not have any nitrogen present inside it. Now let's talk about sulfur. It is very similar and very easy. This is our Leysin solution. If we have sulfur inside it, sodium will combine with sulfur and it will give us sodium sulfide Na2S. First of all, into the Leysin solution I am going to add acetic acid to make it acidic. After that I am going to add lead acetate, PbCH3COO twice, lead acetate. Lead and sulfur will combine, it will give me PbS, lead sulfide, which have black colored particles. PbS will be black colored solid substance. So if my solution have any black colored substance, that means sulfur is present. I have one another test for that. I am going to add sodium nitroprusside into my Leysin solution, and if purple color is obtained, means my solution is containing of sodium. Okay, we have to remember the molecular formula for sodium nitroprusside, Na2FeCN5NO, Na2FeCN5NO, and because of sulfur, NOS will be in the product. That's why it have purple color. We are doing nitrogen test, no Persian blue color is there. We are doing sulfur test, no black or purple color is there. So what happened? What if our compound have nitrogen and sulfur both? What if our compound have sulfur and nitrogen both? Then our Leysin solution will be containing of sodium thiosulfide. Our solution will be containing of sodium thiocyanide, not sulfide. Our solution will contain sodium thiocyanide, and thiocyanide when reacts with Fe+3, it gives us blood red color solution of FeSCN+2. So simply, if this both test comes negative, we have to add FeCl3 into the Leysin solution, and if we gain blood red color, that means our solution containing of nitrogen and sulfur both. But what if we do not have ferric chloride? We are going to make some new Leysin solution with more sodium. If more sodium is there, enough amount of sodium is there, NaCN and Na2S will be separately formed, and both of these tests comes positive. Both of them will come positive. So we do not have to do this test. Clear? Now our next element is halogen, chlorine, bromine and iodine. If halogens are present into the solution, our Leysin solution will be containing of NaX, means NaCl, NaBr or NaI. Simply add some nitric acid to make it acidic, and after that add AgNO3. If chlorine is present, it will form AgCl. If bromine is present, it will form AgBr. And if iodine is there, it will form AgI. Chlorine, AgCl will give me white precipitate, white solid particles. Br will give me yellow particles. Also iodine will also give me yellow particles. If we add silver nitrate into Leysin solution and we have white or yellow precipitation, that means there is a presence of halogen. To confirm it, add some amount of ammonium hydroxide, NH4OH. Add some amount of ammonium hydroxide, NH4OH inside this. If white precipitation dissolves, that means chlorine is present instantly. If slowly yellow precipitation dissolves, that means bromine is present in our organic compound. And if yellow precipitation do not dissolve, that means iodine is present. Chlorine and bromine are going to dissolve, iodine is not going to dissolve. That means AgCl, AgBr will dissolve in NH4OH, but AgI will not dissolve in NH4OH. So that was all about the halogen test. Now let's talk about the phosphorus test, the most IMP test. Into the Leysin solution, phosphorus will combine with the sodium and gives me sodium phosphide. This sodium phosphide, we cannot test it because it is insoluble in everything. So I am going to add hydrogen peroxide to the phosphide, and I am going to convert phosphide into the phosphate, and phosphate will be tested down with ammonium molybdenate. It is possible. That's why I am converting phosphide into the phosphate. First step. Now sodium phosphate, Na3PO4. Sodium phosphate will be boiled with concentrated HNO3. I am adding concentrated HNO3 into the sodium phosphate, and I am going to heat it more and more. I am going to boil it. After that, I am going to add ammonium molybdenate into it. When we boil it, sodium will be removed from phosphate and it will give me phosphoric acid. That's why. And after, when we add ammonium molybdenate, phosphoric acid will react with it in the presence of HNO3 and will give me ammonium phosphomolybdenate. It is yellow in color. If we get canary yellow precipitation, that means phosphorus is present into our organic compound. Okay, what things we have to remember? A reaction of phosphorus test, where molecular formula of ammonium molybdenate is most IMP. Molecular formula of ammonium phosphomolybdenate again most IMP. Molecular formula of sodium nitroprusside again most IMP. And name of these complex compounds. Okay, this is a basic thing about practicals of organic compounds. So if you are going to do your career into the chemistry, this is your first step towards the future. This is the most important and the fundamental thing about your job you are going to do in the chemistry, in the organic chemistry. If you have goal regarding any petroleum industries, this is the fundamental thing. You are going to use it into the regular life of yours when you do the job. So please read it carefully. Every single thing mentioned over here is very much important. So in the homework, we have to complete, first of all, our chromatography. Read every single line carefully, so that if you have any doubts regarding chromatography, contact me directly. After that, start with the qualitative analysis. Go through every single line very carefully for 2 to 3 times and make it perfect. Notes of this into your book and use it. Remember it very clearly. Listen to this lecture at least 3 to 4 times so that this thing becomes clear in your mind. Again, if you have any doubt, contact me. Write it down as a homework at least 2 times. That's all for the today's lecture. In the next lecture, we are going to calculate the percentage of nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, carbon and hydrogen and all. So let's see in the next lecture. Thank you.